ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Till now we have seen the importance of intellect as in resolving the paradox of life. We need an intellect so that the paradox of life can be resolved and we can take the right choices, the right actions, so that the life is better. Till now we have seen it. And what are the paradoxes? That also we saw in the previous class. To continue from where we left last week, you can see a human being is made up of the three equipments we have discussed: the body, the mind, the intellect. A human being is made up of these three instruments: the body, the mind, the intellect. Body, we call it as gross personality. Mind and intellect, we call it as subtle personality. A human being, the gross body, the physical body, and then the inner equipments that makes the body to act. Body by itself cannot act. It is either the inner instruments, the mind or intellect, that drives the body to action. Therefore, what are the two that drives the action? What are the two that drives the body to action? It's either the mind or the intellect. And we have seen the importance of intellect. If intellect were to guide the actions, what are the consequences? We saw that. If intellect wasn't there, what happens? If intellect isn't the guiding factor, then what is it that drives the choices? Then what is it that drives our actions if intellect is not guiding? The mind by default. If intellect is not the guiding force, mind by default guides our actions, our choices. If mind were to guide our actions and choices, what happens? The stress, the strain, the worry, the anxiety, the depression, we have seen all that. Then comes an important aspect of wanting to know what is mind and what is intellect. What is this mind and what is this intellect? And today's topic, today's discussion is about understanding what mind is and understanding what the intellect is as an instrument first. And then we would go into the rest of the topics. But let us briefly try to understand what mind is. Mind is made up of a few aspects, which we will see it on the board now. Mind means made up of a few factors: emotions, impulses, likes and dislikes, that which resists changes, that which divides, that which gets possessive, attached, procrastinates, that which exaggerates, that which rambles into the past and the future. It's there on the board, and one by one we'll explain so that you don't miss anything. No internal means of guiding, regulating, or moderating. For that alone, we have used the Sanskrit word asthira and chanchala. All this put together is the instrument called mind. We'll take it up one by one. The first one is mind is made up of emotions. All emotions, be it good, be it bad, be it indifferent, all belongs to the mind. A good emotion like love, compassion is of the mind. Negative emotions like anger, jealousy, greed, again it is of the mind. Distinct and different from good and bad is the third one. A, indifference. All these three are emotions and they pertain to the mind. The first one. The second thing that you got to understand about the emotion is emotion etymologically is derived from the word motion. The English word emotion etymologically is derived from the root word motion. Motion means movement. Movement means change. So by definition, emotions is that which keeps moving. Emotion is that which keeps changing. By nature, emotions keeps changing. And any choices made according to these changing emotions, you are bound to regret the choices. You are bound to make errors and you are bound to regret those choices. Emotions per se, we are not calling it as wrong. Emotions per se, you cannot eliminate. For human being, minus emotion is like a wood. Human being minus emotion is like a dead wood. That is not what we are talking about emotions. This is the nature of emotions, and choices must not be made by this instrument mind. That is the first lesson as far as emotion is concerned. Good, bad, and indifferent. And then on practical experience, you will understand of the three emotions, good, bad, and indifferent. Even though linguistically, the opposite of love, if I ask any one of you, what is the opposite of love, you will say hatred. If I ask any one of you, what is the opposite of love, you will say hatred. That is the linguistic opposite. The linguistic opposite of love is hatred. The real opposite of love is indifference. That's why even in practical life, if you really want to hurt somebody, how do you hurt? Somebody hates, somebody loves you, somebody fights with you, hates you, and somebody turns indifferent towards you. There are three possibilities, isn't it? Somebody can love you, somebody can fight with you, hate you, and somebody can turn indifferent. From your own practical life, what is it that will hurt you the most? When somebody ignores you, when somebody turns indifferent to you, isn't it? Even when somebody picks up a fight, you will not be that hurtful. Why? Because at least some interaction is happening. You send a message and you know the other person has seen the message and not responding it. It means that person is ignoring. That ignoring causes hurt. So some emotions causes good things. Some emotions like anger and hatred also causes some negative reactions. Indifference causes maximum hurt. So we understand that the first thing that happens to the mind is emotions, and emotions by nature changes, and any choice made by these changing emotions, what will happen? what will happen? There will not be any consistency in your personality. Any choice based on emotions, there will not be a consistency. So that which takes the consistency away is the choices that you make based on emotions, and you can't tell the emotions don't change. It's against the law. It's against the law. Don't change. You can't. It is against the law to say that emotions should not change. Why? By definition, emotion is that which keeps changing. We understand that, and we know how to handle this emotion. That is the first thing, emotion. The second thing about the mind is impulses. Mind is made up of impulses. And what is the definition of an impulse? A sudden, strong urge. That is an impulse. A sudden, strong urge that forces itself is an impulse. And mind is made up of such impulses. The great Saint Ramatirtha gives an example for what is this impulse. He gives a beautiful example to describe this impulse. In those days, milk was delivered in bottles, glass bottles, and then came sachets, plastics. Before that, milk used to be delivered in glass bottles. I think so many of you will be remembering those days where milk will be delivered in glass bottles. Now what happened is a milkman was carrying a crate of bottles, milk to deliver, and he took out one bottle. When he took one bottle out, it slipped and fell and broke. In an impulse, he throws the whole crate down and breaks all the bottles. This is called impulse. This is called impulse. And human beings make life-changing decisions, important decisions in life based on these impulses. And then come back, pay the price, regret, and then they ask where, when, what went wrong, where things went wrong. Now it's not that you can't rectify it. You can rectify it. By the time you could have rectified it, you will pay a heavy price of pain and sorrow and misery. So second thing is you got to understand, mind is that which is made up of impulses. And what is the definition of impulse? A sudden, strong urge. A person goes to attend the 50th interview, and the person is attending the 50th interview means what? 14 interviews I have attended and he has failed. That's why he is going to the 50th interview. In the 50th interview also he didn't succeed. In that impulse, he tears the certificates. A sudden, strong urge. Inappropriate to your own wellness, inappropriate to your own betterment, impulses are destructive. And those impulses can be positive or negative, doesn't matter. It is impulse, and that impulse drives you to make choices which you regret. It can be a positive impulse also. But nevertheless, whether it is positive or negative, impulses are dangerous. What is positive impulse? You see somebody on the roadside suffering. Immediately you want to help that person. You give something, and then you find that that person doesn't deserve the help, but he made you impulsive. And you know what is the technique behind all advertisements? The technique behind all advertisements, including Vedanta advertisements, we also follow the same methodology only. Make you as impulsive as possible so that you don't think at all. and immediately subscribe. Should not think, because if you are allowed to think, it's dangerous. Therefore, that feature is used. Are you able to understand now? Impulse, because they say in 20 seconds, in 30 seconds, that person must be attracted. How can a thinking person will not get attracted? He will weigh the pros and cons and then take a decision. But then most people being impulsive, they do it. That's why here we take 10 classes to make sure that when you are signing up, nobody turns impulsive here. Otherwise, we can use words. Even here, we can use words, we can use phrases, we can use jargons and stir up emotions. It's not difficult at all. Please understand, it's not at all difficult. And bring in a few jokes here and there and make it look so. Believe me, it's not difficult at all. It can be made into a wonderful show. And then when you go back and reflect, you know that you didn't get anything valuable at all. Why? In this classroom, we want people to be aware of the impulsive nature, not to make use of that impulsive nature. The second thing about the mind is impulses. Impulses means in a hurry, in a speed to do an action. That is impulse. The speed, the hurry. That's why impulse is defined as a sudden, strong urge. Long back, there was a meeting. I was a child when I was attending that meeting. There was a meeting here, and then that was the time they were talking about this building this Ram temple and all that. So that man was so eloquently talking and everything. He's saying, 14 years Rama walked in the forest for us. Can't you do this much for Lord Rama? Whipping up the emotions, and the whole lot gave everything. They said, whatever you have in your pocket, empty your pockets and go. And some of the women took their Mangal Sutra also, and they left it. Second day, third day, phone calls started coming. Can you please return that? Where can you return? That fellow has taken everything and gone. No, who will you? It can be positive, it can be negative. Nevertheless, choices are made due to this impulse. Be aware of it. We are not saying it is right or wrong, good or bad. We are saying, Vedanta is saying, be aware of the second thing. What is the second thing? Impulses, a sudden, strong urge. The third important aspect of the mind is likes and dislikes. The third important aspect of the mind is likes and dislikes. In Sanskrit, it's called Raga Dvesha. Attraction and aversion. And the entire Vedantic philosophy is revolving around these two words, likes and dislikes, Raga Dvesha. The entire Vedantic philosophy. Anybody who is concerned about human welfare is concerned about these two, likes and dislikes, attractions and aversions, Raga and Dvesha. In the Mahabharata war, Duryodhana had a like for Pandavas' wealth and dislike for Pandavas. Everybody follow? In Mahabharata war, Duryodhana had a like for the Pandavas' wealth and dislike for the Pandavas. And all human beings are a bundle of likes and dislikes. And these likes and dislikes drives the choices. And those whose actions are driven by likes and dislikes faces perennial conflict. They will face maximum conflict. They will face maximum obstacles. Why? Because The world is not designed to cater to one's individual's likes and dislikes. World is not designed to cater to one individual likes and dislikes. Therefore, that individual will face perennial conflict with the world. Second thing about likes and dislikes is it keeps changing. Second thing about likes and dislikes is it keeps changing. Third thing about likes and dislikes is that which you like is attractive as long as you don't have it. The moment you have it, 50% of the attraction is gone. Third day, zero attraction. That is the third and the most important aspect. Yeah. Some of you are laughing because maybe you have experienced all this. Yeah. And looking for a solution of how to, what is the way out of this? Don't worry, we have solutions. Huh? We are one-stop solution for everything we have. Don't. It is attractive as long as you don't have it. The moment you have it, 50% of the joy content is gone. The third day, 0% joy. The child, you take the child to the toy store. The child is attracted to a toy. It will ask you for the toy. You say no. And the child will embarrass you in the toy store. No. It will cry. It will make a scene. It will roll on the ground. It will embarrass you so much that you have to buy you get the toy. When you reach home, when you get out of the car, the child will forget the toy. The child forgets the toy. The parent will carry the toy because so expensive toy, no? The parent will carry the toy and the parent will tell the child, play with it, play with it, play with it. And the child doesn't even look at it. For the likes and dislikes has already gone to the next one. Maybe it will come to play with some vessel in the kitchen, isn't it? All the toys we will keep there and it will come and take some vessel from the kitchen and bang it. Might as well you would have given that 50 rupee kitchen vessel, no? The child cannot understand. Likes and dislikes. It's okay, it is acceptable, it's all right when the child does it. It's all right, it is acceptable when the child does it. When the same thing is done by an adult, what do you do? And this likes and dislikes makes a person stubborn, unreasonable. That's why all great human beings concerned about the welfare of our lives talk about one thing about this likes and dislikes. Why? Because it makes us stubborn, it makes us unreasonable. And all choices are made on these likes and dislikes. Therefore, the third thing is likes and dislikes. See, I'm not going into the details. I'm just giving for each and everything. I'll give you one story or one example. So that even if you forget the point, you will remember the story and you can connect it. Even if you forget it, don't worry. Next 7 classes, we'll be discussing only this. And then you think you are going to escape at the end of the 10th class, no? And you all think that you are going to escape at the end of the 10th class. Yeah, but we learned, we are free. Yeah? That is where we will drag you to your lifetime commitment. Don't worry. It's not as. Why? Because understanding it is very important. Knowledge being volatile, it disappears as fast as it appears. Gautam Buddha gives a beautiful description of knowledge. What is knowledge? He says, knowledge is like water sprinkled on a hot iron plate. As you are listening, it looks understandable. As you are listening, you feel that you have understood it. the next situation when you have to face in life, all that you have learned will disappear. And then you will remember it after everything is done. And then you will remember it after everything is done. That is because of lack of intellect. It's not that you do not know what to do, what not to do. This intellect is not available to you before you execute the choice. Before you make the choice, you need to know is what Vedanta calls as the intellect. So the third thing is likes and dislikes, raga dvesha. The fourth thing is resist changes. Mind is that which resists changes. It can't accept change. Nowadays, what they call as change management, teaching people how to manage the changes. Why? Because mind is resisting changes. Mind is not willing to accept the changes. Whether I accept or I don't accept, I agree or I do not agree, changes keep happening. And mind is that which resists changes. Here, I can't give this example. In the regular classes, I give this example. You come into the auditorium, empty auditorium. You will choose a particular seat. You will choose a particular seat. And you will go and sit in that seat. Why you choose that seat? For whatever reasons, you will choose a seat. Next week, second week, third week, you will automatically be gravitated towards that seat only. Fifth week, if you see somebody sitting on that seat before you, I have seen it. Out of 10, 7 will go and say, can you go to the next seat? Why? I am used to do this. Cannot accept change. And nevertheless, the beauty of life is it keeps bringing in change after change after change. The beauty of life is only because it is changing. If it is not changing, it is plastic. If it is not changing, it is plastic, no life. Mind doesn't understand that. Mind wants to have everything as plastics, isn't it? The rose is so beautiful because it withers away. And you can have a plastic rose also. But then there is a difference between the real rose and the plastic rose. What is the beauty of the real rose? By evening, it withers away. The plastic rose will be the same for the next 20 years also, it will remain the same, but there is no beauty in it. And mind is that which will not be able to appreciate the beauty in anything because it resists changes. When the mind develops resistance to changes, appreciation comes down. What in the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, he uses the word ascharya, 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 wonderment, wonderment, wonderment. Mind that resisting changes misses the wonderment of life. The mind that is resisting changes misses the wonderment of life. And nevertheless, it keeps changing. And intellect is that which helps you to accommodate the changes. Intellect is that which helps you to accommodate the change, accept the change, what in common language called as go with the flow. Learn to go with the flow. What is going with the flow means? Changes are happening and go with accept the change and keep moving. 100 years back, when the father walks in, all the children will get up and walk out of the room, isn't it? I don't think my grandfather would have had a conversation with his father. I don't think so. At least I had a conversation with my father, changed. At least I had a conversation with my father, changed. Now, what is the change? I do that. When my daughter walks in, I come into the room. You come home, the child is, you see the plate, you look at the plate on the child's lap, you know dinner got over 45 minutes back because it's so dried up. No, you know that dinner is over 45 minutes back, and the child is stretching the legs and sitting and watching TV. And as you are passing away, the child says, leave the plate in the sink. And the father also takes the plate and leaves it in the sink. We can't say 100 years back fathers were all terrorists and now only fathers are loving. We can't say that, correct? It changes. Fathers were loving then, fathers were loving even now. But then the way in which things keeps changing. Mind is that which resists changes. A group of people went to a wise man and they complained. This is true. This is a factor. It's there in the books. A group of people went to the wise man and complained. The complaint that they gave is the younger generation are spoiled completely today. They have no values. They have no respect. They are all destroyed completely. You being a wise person, correct the youngsters. And you want to know who's that wise person this complaint was given to? Does anybody know this? Okay, you won't know. Then if anybody says, I know, I will be careful. If nobody, I don't know, I can say whatever I want to know. That's why I keep checking every now and then. What you know, what you know, what you know. If you say, I don't know, then I can say whatever I want and it will be, and it will get sold also. Oh, Socrates, correct the youngsters of today. This complaint was given to Socrates. If you take the book Republic, it's there. This complaint was given to Socrates. And you know, Socrates lived 2000 years back. Socrates didn't live, Socrates is not living now. Socrates didn't live 50 years back. He lived 2000 years back. It means what? The human mind didn't change at all. It is so much resisting the changes. The fourth one, mind is that which resists changes. The fifth one, mind is that which divides. Mind is that which divides. Dvandvas, there's a Sanskrit word that is used because for everything where there's an appropriate English word we use. Where we only get a close appropriate word, we use the Sanskrit word also. It is mind is that which divides. Divides everything into dvandvas. Dvandvas means opposites. It divides everything into polar opposites. By dividing, it survives. Like they say, divide and rule policy, no? Divide and rule policy. From where they got this policy? From the mind only. Because mind is that which divides. On what basis it divides? It divides based on its own likes and dislikes. On what basis it divides? Based on likes and dislikes. The next one is attachment. If likes and dislikes is the deadliest, deadlier than the deadliest is attachment, possessiveness, attachment. What is attachment? Possessiveness. Attachment, possessiveness means having it, you will not be happy. Not having it, also again, you will not be happy. That is possessiveness. With it or without it, misery is the result. That is called attachment. If the object of your attachment is there, it is misery. If the object of your attachment isn't there, again it is misery. So all miseries of the mind can be tracked to this specific aspect of the mind called attachment, possessiveness. And you need an intellect to be aware of this quality of the mind so that you can relate and not get attached. That's what intellect does. Intellect helps you to relate with everything. Intellect helps you to identify, associate with everything, but it knows how to guide the mind so that it doesn't get attached. And what is attachment? Attachment is a kind of, actually, it's not a kind of, attachment is nothing but suffocation. Attachment is nothing but suffocation. Either in the name of love, we suffocate the other, or we turn indifferent and run away. We do not know how to love and not suffocate. Again, I repeat, what is attachment? Attachment is suffocation. And what is suffocation? A mental heaviness. Mental heaviness because something is sitting on the mind constantly. That is the suffocation. And nobody likes to be suffocated. Huh? You will like to suffocate the other, but you will not want anyone to suffocate you, isn't it? That's what attachment. And what is attachment? Suffocation. What is a simple example of suffocation? Okay. You are invited for, just assume as an example, you are invited for the child's birthday. 6-year-old child, 7-year-old child, the friend's child, you are invited for the birthday. You go for the birthday. As soon as you enter the house, the child affectionately comes running towards you, jumps on you and hugs you. What will be your reaction? You will also say, what a lovely child, what a wonderful child, everything. 3 minutes passed, 5 minutes passed, the child is not releasing. It's holding on to you tightly. What would you do at the 5th minute? What would you do at the 5th minute? You say, see, uncle is choking, no? Uncle is choking, no? Slightly release the hand, and the child doesn't release the hand. 7th minute, what will you do? You forcefully separate yourself from the child. You are not hating the child, you are not angry at the child, but you separate yourself. Why? Because you are suffocated. Mental suffocation is attachment. We understand the physical suffocation. Intellect is needed to understand the mental suffocation. That's why we spoke about it as a paradox in the last class also. We all understand the physical suffocation, but you need an intellect to understand the mental suffocation. And if you have some affection towards the other, you will not want to suffocate, isn't it? You will not want to suffocate the person. And what is that? Possessiveness. The next one is a beautiful thing. Exaggerates. Mind is that which exaggerates. Everything mind exaggerates. Success, it exaggerates. Failure, it exaggerates. Joy, it will exaggerate. Sorrow, it will exaggerate. The nature of the mind is to exaggerate. Two continuous success the person faces, the mind exaggerates, making them to believe that from now on, whatever I touch turn into gold, isn't it? Two continuous failures, three continuous failures, the mind says, I'm finished, sir. Even gods can't help me anymore. Exaggeration. And mind is that which exaggerates. Pain, it exaggerates. Pleasure, it exaggerates. Joy, it exaggerates. Sorrow, it exaggerates. Success, it exaggerates. Failure, it exaggerates. And this exaggeration, what it does to you? It becomes so huge in front of you, so big in front of you. Your own exaggeration appears so huge and so big in front of you that you will not be able to handle it. That's where when people come and say, I am not able to handle it, I am not able to handle it. As a third person, you understand that it's not so big, isn't it? When somebody comes and says, I'm having a problem and I'm not able to understand, I'm not able to deal with it. As a third person, you always understand it's not so big a problem. Why are you making it a big problem? Why are you making it? It is the quality of the mind. What is the quality of the mind? Is to exaggerate. I'll give you two examples to explain what exaggeration is. First one is a real example. You know, there are most of the people are afraid of an injection. Most of the human beings are afraid of an injection. So a person goes to the doctor and the doctor says, you need an injection. At the mention of the word injection, the person faints. Another person goes to the doctor, sick. The doctor says, you need an injection, you need a shot, you need an injection. And the person sits like Buddha in meditation. The doctor asks, what are you doing? Yeah, there are people who do that, no? They sit in meditation, they close their eyes, and the doctor asks, what are you doing? I'm preparing for the injection. The third person goes to the doctor. The doctor says, you need an injection. As he is being injected, he goes. Fourth person goes to the doctor. Doctor says, injection is over, get up. Are you able to follow till now? Now, I'll ask you a simple question. Remove the mind from all these four people. How does the body register an injection? Remove the mind. From all these four people, remove the mind. How does the body register an injection? They are not poked. They are not cut into two pieces alive, an injection. And what is an injection? Injection is a simple pinprick. Injection is nothing but a simple pinprick. Where does the pain coming from? They say it comes from the mind. It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. What does that mean when they say it's all in the mind? Exaggeration. If only you can clip the exaggerations and look at the situations as they are, you would know how to handle it. You need an intellect to clip the exaggerations. What is the role of the intellect? The role of the intellect is to clip the exaggerations of the mind and see it as it is. You would know exactly how to handle it. The problem is you exaggerate it. First example. Remember the pinprick example. You will understand exaggeration. The second example is from the Bhagavatam, the story. Krishna and Balrama, brothers. They go into the forests. Looking for something, they go into the forest. And they lose their way. They lose their way in the forest, and it gets dark. And they can't come back. So they have to spend the night in the forest. And when they have to spend the night in the forest, it's a dangerous, and forest is not a picnic spot, isn't it? It's life dangerous situation. So both the brothers decided that while one will be asleep, the other will keep a watch. They decided that. So Krishna told Balrama, you sleep first. Sorry, Balrama told Krishna that you sleep first, I will keep watch. And Krishna slept, and Balrama is keeping watch. As Balrama is keeping a watch, an yaksha came, an apparition came. Apparition means a ghost-like figure came. And it started making noises. When ghost-like figure comes, it will not come singing Suprabhadam, no. Ghost-like figure will come making weird noises. Hearing that, Balrama got afraid, and he looked at the apparition and asked, who are you? When he asked in fear, who are you? It grew 100 times in size. Looking at that growing 100 times in size, Balrama got more anxious and asked, who are you? It grew 100 times more. Balrama fainted. At that time, Krishna woke up. He didn't know what happened. So he thought Balrama is sleeping, and he kept the watch. He was watching. Same apparition came. It made with the same noises. Krishna said, whatever it is, we will talk. My brother is sleeping, he said. My brother is sleeping, let us talk. It shrank in size. Again, it made some noise. Krishna said, I told you, whatever it is, we can talk it out. Why are you making these noises? It came to the size of the thumb. No, the thumb. What is the size of the thumb? 1.5 inches. And Krishna, what he thought, it's a nice thing to play with. So what he did, he picked it up and he tied it in his, they have the string, the waist string. He tied it in the waist string so that he can go home and play with it. The dawn happened, Balrama woke up and they were walking back. And Balrama told Krishna, you know what happened, Krishna, last night when you were sleeping and Yaksha came, I fainted and I don't know what happened after that. Krishna took that out and showed him, this is the Yaksha, no? The story is over. Huh? That's all the story is. They don't explain all this. Story is over. Exaggeration. Are you able to follow? There is a pain, but the mind tends to exaggerate, and that exaggeration makes it so huge, so big, that you would find it difficult to handle. So what the intellect does, intellect says, clip the exaggeration and let us deal with the situation. Or you can deal with the real situation. What you cannot deal with is the exaggeration. Why? Because exaggeration is imaginary. And what can you do with the imagination? What can you do with the imagination? What is the solution to the imagination? The solution to the imagination is to stop imagining, that's all. What else can you do? Mind is that which exaggerates. And then the next one, rambles. Rambles into the past and the future. The last but one quality of the mind is that which rambles. Rambles into the past and the future. This rambling takes the concentration away. This rambling of the mind takes the concentration away. Where does it ramble? Into the worries of the past and anxieties for the future. That's the rambling. It rambles into the worries of the past and anxieties for the future. As you are sitting here, the mind goes on a world tour, no? Physically, we are present here. As I am talking, my mind can go on a world tour. It's not going, I'm just giving an example. Huh? Otherwise, all the time, why are you picking us on us? You know, why are you? So that's why I'm using my example now. As I am talking, my mind can go on a world tour and come back. I will not be talking sense, I will be blabbering. As you are listening, the mind goes on a world tour. Where does it go? Into the past, into the future. What is into the future? Only 10 more minutes. Hopefully today nobody will ask any questions and elongate the session so that there is an Independence Day party. So I can go and do that and hope this person stops on time. First 2 sessions he stopped on time. Today we don't know whether he, so anxieties for it will go into the future while you are in the present, or mind will ramble something that happened in the past. These two aspects of the mind rambling into the past and the future is that which causes fatigue. The mental fatigue, the mental tiredness is because of this rambling into the past and the future uncontrollably. Please understand that. You got to use your past. Intellect is that which uses the past for some knowledge. Intellect is that which plans and sets the goal as far as the future is concerned. What we are talking about rambling is mind going all by itself. Are you able to notice the difference? Mind by itself going into the past and future takes the concentration away. When the concentration is gone, a person will not be able to achieve anything. That's why we want, everybody wants everybody else to concentrate, no? When I am talking to you, I will want you to concentrate. When you are listening to me, you are hoping that I am concentrating and talking, isn't it? The parents wants the children to concentrate. The student wants the teacher to concentrate. The teacher wants the student to concentrate. You go to work. The management expects the personnel to concentrate on the work. And what is the attention span? That's what concentration is. What is the attention span? I don't know how they arrive at all these things, but it is true. The attention span, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, it goes and it comes back. It goes and it comes back. And the beauty of the mind is what you have to notice now. It will miss one point and it will go on a tour. After 20 minutes, it will come back to the class. 20 minutes, you didn't hear anything of what is said. But the mind can make a perfect connection between what was said then and what you hear now, and it will make you to believe that you have, I understood. What? How can you understand when you didn't hear anything for 20 minutes? And yet, the mind does it. This is called rambling. Rambling into the worries of the past and anxieties of the future. Intellect uses the knowledge from the past. Knowledge is always from the past. So the intellect uses the knowledge from the past. Intellect is that which plans, programs, sets an ideal, and all that belongs to the future. So we got to make use of the past and the future. If the intellect makes use of the past and future, it is called planning, it is called concentration, it is called consistency. When the mind by itself goes into the past and the future without any guidance, it's called rambling. And it is rambling that causes fatigue. It is rambling that causes tiredness. Work never tires. Work never tires, and it is this that tires. This rambling into the past and future is that which tires. Then the last one. Mind cannot guide, regulate, moderate itself. No internal means of guiding, regulating, or moderating itself. Mind cannot do that. Asthira and Chanchala. These two words, Asthira and Chanchala, again, it is from the Bhagavad Gita. So you may ask from where you get all these definitions of the mind. All these definitions of the mind is from one verse in the Bhagavad Gita. In my regular Bhagavad Gita classes, I keep pointing it out. This is that verse where this definition of the mind is taken from. This is the verse, this definition of the mind is taken from. Now in this classroom, I don't do that. Because if we say Bhagavad Gita class, nobody is coming. Then they have to put, I don't know what they called it as. They titled it as inner wellness. I don't know what this inner, what wellness, I don't know. We know only mind and intellect. Because if we say Bhagavad Gita slokas, nobody is coming. So even this is taken all, each and every one thing is one particular verse in Bhagavad Gita. But we don't understand Vedanta like that. We have a total different misunderstanding about the scriptures. So we are only trying to generate an interest in the scriptures by all this. Asthira and Chanchala. No internal means of guiding, regulating, or moderating. Asthira and Chanchala. Asthira means two types of movements. Movement within a place and movement from place to place. Mind has these two types of movements and you cannot stop it. That's what people try to do in the name of meditation, in the name of exercises. They want to stop this movement of the mind, and you cannot stop the mind forcefully, because anything forced is never forceful. That's what we will start with the intellect. I have only 1 minute more. All the definitions of the mind itself took so much. Don't worry. Next class, we will define what the intellect is. That will take one more session. Mind cannot regulate itself. Mind cannot moderate itself. It is the intellect that can guide the mind. Just as the child cannot parent itself. It is the parent that has to guide the child. Mind is like the child in you. Intellect is the adult in you. Child is wonderful as long as the child is guided. The same child becomes destructive when it is indisciplined, pampered, isn't it? Now, what do we do to the mind? We are so indisciplined and we pamper the mind that it has taken control of our lives. What Vedanta says is, you ought not to destroy the child, you ought not to kill the child, you ought not to strangle the child, but the child in you can't make decisions and choices. That's all. Any one of these 7-8 things that we spoke today, if that decides the choice, it can be fatal, detrimental. Imagine a human being having weaknesses in all these. What will happen? What a depressing pain to have. What a depression, sir. We thought this is a motivating class and we came here and you made it more depressive now. Looks like no solution at all. We are able to talk about the disease so much in detail because we have a solution. The solution is the intellect, and there is the material that is available for the intellect, the growth of the intellect. The 3-year e-learning course, the books, the material is available. That is why we are able to talk about it so much in detail, because we got the solution in hand. Supposing if we don't have the solution in hand, it is opening up the wound unnecessarily, isn't it? Therefore, looking at all this, don't get depressed. It's not to make you get frightened. It's not to make you get depressed. What it means is this: what the child in you should not make the choices. The mind in you, the intellect being the adult, should guide your choices. It presupposes that you have some knowledge of what mind is, and you have some knowledge of what intellect is. Before going to the intellect, it is important to understand what the mind is. This is the mind. You can say never mind. You can say that also. Too much, sir. Never mind the mind. You will be as never mind. Don't do that. It's for your own betterment and for the betterment of those around you. You need to know these basics, because we are always placed in situations in life where you have to guide yourself and you have to guide somebody else. Life keeps us in those positions where we have to guide ourselves and we have to guide somebody else. The guide may be the children, the parent, everybody. The guide may be that. But definitely you got to help somebody. So it is important for you to understand these things. Emotions, impulses, likes and dislikes, resist changes, it divides, it gets possessive, attached, exaggerates, rambles into the past and the future. No internal means of guiding or regulating or moderating by itself. It has to be guided, moderated, regulated by the superior instrument, and the name of that instrument is called intellect. Buddhi. With this, we conclude the session for today. We'll spend a few minutes in the clarification.
Puneet Luthra has a question. He has posted a question.
Oh, okay, it's posted.
Pranam, sir. Sir, now
Yes.
we at least know this because you've given us the knowledge, so we at least can understand what are the
Yes.
plays of the mind.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we'll have to reflect on it, study this.
Yes.
But like you rightly said, sometimes the situation comes,
Yes.
we react, we don't respond. So there is a time gap, which ideally you should see to be aware, to observe the situation, right? But now
Yes.
it's in the back of the mind. But you also said it's like throwing the water on the hot plate. So it is also confusing then how to retain that? Either we make that plate cold so that it stays, the water stays.
Yes.
But then, so how to improve our awareness? How do we be conscious of the plays of the mind? Basically, is because knowledge is there, right? But how do we kind of convert that, right? So,
yes. Yes. Now, the information that you have is retained by the process called reflection. It is retained by the process called reflection and repeated reflection. Like, for example, 2 + 2 = 4. We are able to say that like this. Even if a person is drunk fully, you ask him what is 2 + 2, he will not say 22. He will say 2 plus 2 equals 4. Why? Because that much of reflection is done. Where did it start? 2 in the mind, 2 in the fingers. 2 in the mind, 2 in the fingers for 1 year. And then 2 plus 2. 7, 8 years of training is what makes it available. Here it will not take 7, 8 years and all. Don't get scared. For 7, 8 years, and by the time all the choices would have made, what will I do, sir? It will not take 7, 8 years. Very soon, if you rightly follow the practices. And how soon it is, we can't quantify it. It all depends upon the individual's effort and how they, what is the time they give for reflection, how much of time they dedicate only for this pursuit. Depending on all these factors, you will be aware of this mind, so that before taking decisions, it is available to you. The knowledge is available to you before you decide. Knowledge should not be a deliberate process of availability. It should come in an instant. That is knowledge. It's not a deliberate thinking process. Like when the child crosses the road, you hit the brake instantaneously. Knowledge is that it comes to you it must be available in the first instant, maybe 1/1,000,000th of a second or 1/100th of a second, I don't know, whatever, but it is available. It means what? That much of training has gone into it. Always remember this. Effortlessness comes out of much effort. It's a paradox. Effortlessness comes out of much effort. If you see somebody doing something so effortlessly, you understand that effortlessness is backed by much effort. And because we are not willing to spend that time on our own self, we don't find it happening. Like most of the things that I said today, honestly, I know you all knew this before. I will not go back telling myself that I taught you all something which you didn't know before. Maybe the word intellect you didn't know. I didn't know. But these things about the mind that's why you are able to immediately connect with it, relate with it. It's known. But then why are we still a victim of it? Is because we don't spend considerable time and effort. And when I say considerable time and effort, that's what in the 9th session, 10th session, we'll be discussing that. How to strengthen the intellect. What are the various methodologies of you having to strengthen? We have 2 sessions dedicated for that. And you will be completely hypnotized, brainwashed to believe in the solution. Don't worry. Is it okay, Punit?
Yes. No, thank you.
Yes. Anything else, Venkat? Yaradru kala?
Yes, Soumya.
Soumya. Yes, Soumya.
Sir, I have one question. My first question is, you said any choice made out of emotion doesn't give a good consequence. So for example, I want to choose a life partner and I am choosing out of love. That is an emotion. So will it not, I don't know, won't it be a right choice or wrong choice? Or
now, if I have understood the difference between love and attachment, and what I call is not attachment but love, then it is a right choice. What I call as love, I'm not saying it is not love. I'm just bringing in a possibility. What I call as love may not be love, maybe just an attachment. And that attachment, I can misunderstand it as love and make a choice. So I am misunderstanding love as an attachment and making a choice. Thereby, the decision itself will come back to hurt me, isn't it? Therefore, you can make the choice based on emotion, provided the intellect has Intellect has monitored the emotion, analyzed it, weighed the pros and cons, and then what nowadays they call as informed decision. If it is that, then it is the play of the intellect. If it is just because I like that person and I misunderstanding that like to be a love, intellect says, what is love? What is attachment? Do I have the right assessment of that person I'm going to live with? Do I know? Do I have the right assessment of that person? Does the person have the right assessment about me? Some minimum factors. Now people in the name of love, they get into it blindfoldedly. I'm sure you are not going to do that. The fact that you are asking means you are not going to do that. Soumya. Unmute Soumya, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir, I got a clarity. And I actually have another question.
Yes.
So you said you explained about possessiveness and attachment, and there was also one more word which is procrastinates. So
Yeah.
what is relation?
Yes. See, procrastination is another distinct quality of the mind which I missed. Procrastination means at one point of time it will want to be in a hurry. At another point of time it will simply postpone. Mind moves in these distinct opposites. It will be in a hurry. At the same time, it will be procrastinate. Procrastination means postponing. Postponing for no reason at all. I just don't like it. Let me do it later. Procrastination. Correct. I missed it. Yes. Soumya, please don't observe the classes so intently. If you, I am talking with the belief that nobody is listening to me so intently. Now I have to be careful. Yes. Any more? Soumya, is it okay, Soumya? One more. Yes.
You said usage of impulses in
Yes.
marketing, training programs or something. So I'm an emotional intelligence trainer. So I'm learning to market so that I can help people. So I don't know where to draw the line of dharma. So
Yes. Correct. Yes. See.
elaborate.
Oh, okay. You are training emotional intelligence. Very good. Then it's easy to tell you.
Okay.
It's very easy. The line is, I give the facts. When I give the facts, I give the negative side of it also. Exactly like in the medical prescription, they talk about it as the medicine, and they talk about the side effects also. When you read the side effects, it will look like as though they are poisoning you to death, isn't it? You buy a medicine and you read what all they call as side effects. Doesn't look like medicine. Looks like the doctor and the pharmaceutical industry has ganged up to poison you to death, isn't it? That's not what they are doing. It is a information passed on in an objective manner. You pass on the information in an objective manner and give the person the time to process, reflect, and make one's own choice. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita does that. 600 and 700 verses of knowledge. After giving the 700 verses of chaste philosophy and knowledge, Krishna tells Arjuna finally, I have told you all that I have to tell you. Yata ishyasi tata kuru. Do as you wish. Meaning, do as you have understood. That's the dharma. You have to educate. You have to educate. You have to give the facts. But the last thing that you will not do is what? You give the freedom of choice to the other person. In advertising, that will not be done. Huh? You should not give the person the choice. You should make the person believe that without this, that person will, without this, the person will die. And when they go to the store, Swamiji gives this example. Lux, 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 Lux. So constantly bombarded that when you go to the store, instead of asking for the soap, you are so subconsciously trained to ask for Lux soap, isn't it? Impulse, using that impulsive nature. All that you got to do is you got to use this constructively. We can use it constructively. See, all these qualities of the mind, what intellect does, it will not destroy any one of these. It will not strangle any one of this. It will know how to use all this constructively. That's what the intellect does. How to do it, we are going to see. Okay, Soumya?
Sir, one last question. So, you said sticking to being stubborn and unreasonable, and that we can adapt to change. So sometimes sticking to principles, sticking to dharma also comes into place. So
No. Sorry.
yes, so sometimes some people say that I'll always, never tell a lie, or I'll always say the truth, or I will always be in a certain way. So now I want to know what is the demarcation between this dharma and following this going with the flow.
Yes. The demarcation is based on the formula called sense of value versus sense of proportion. It's based on the formula called sense of value and sense of proportion. In Sanskrit, it is called Sadharana Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. In Sanskrit, it's called Sadharana Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. In English, it's called sense of value and sense of proportion. Sense of value is not to lie. Sense of proportion is some situations in life you have to lie, but then you are not actually lying because you don't have an intent to cheat. You're able to follow? So intellect is that which knows how to use the sense of value and the sense of proportion. Under all circumstances, if I say I will not lie, I'm being very unreasonable. I'll give you the same example that Swamiji gives. See, I am not a fighter. I can't stand one hard blow. I will faint. There are 5 men chasing a girl with the intent of hurting the girl, molesting the girl. The girl rushes into my house, takes shelter behind me. And she pleads with me saying that when they come, please tell them that I am not here. Now the 5 men come and they ask me this question. What is the question? Have you seen this girl? Did you see this girl? What answer should I give? Yeah, she's here only. Or do I have to say, she's not? I don't know who you are referring to. Go and see in somebody else's place. She didn't come here. Now I am lying. Correct? Technically speaking, I am lying. But then you know that you are not lying. You follow? Another example, I conclude. You are driving on the highway by following the road rules and regulations. You will not cross over to the wrong side. You see a drunken truck driver coming head on. What would you do? You will go to the wrong side. And the policeman is watching you. The policeman is watching you going to the wrong side and coming back. Will the policeman fine you or will the policeman congratulate you? Policeman will congratulate you because you have averted a major accident. And he will go behind the truck driver only, even though you have violated the rule too. isn't it? Technically speaking, you too have violated by going to the wrong side of the road. And especially where there are two yellow lines, you should not cross, but then you crossed. That is sense of proportion. You follow what I'm saying? So intellect is that which has a firm conviction in the values and also knows how to, and also knows where to apply proportion. Sense of value is like medicine. Sense of proportion is like dosage. Sense of value is like medicine. Sense of proportion is like dosage. Medicine has a value only because of the appropriate dosage, isn't it? Medicine is valuable only because of the appropriate dosage. This is how right through you follow a conviction. In life, intellect means sticking to a conviction. When we see the definition of the intellect, we will understand. Is it okay, Soumya? Yeah, nice. With this, we
One-
conclude our-
One
Yeah,
more Mala.
Mala. Mala. Will the mind not rejoice the past and good things to do in the future? Mind rejoicing the past is called gratitude, and it is a function of the intellect. By itself, mind will only worry about the past. You got to train the mind to be grateful. Mala, puriyarda? Is it okay? You got to train it. It won't come naturally. And good things to do in the future is the plan, the program, which I said already. You plan it. You mind by itself going when you are supposed to sit and listen. That is rambling. I have made a choice to speak to you between 4:30 and 5:30. Having made the choice to speak to you between 4:30 and 5:30, my mind should not ramble. That's all. Now, what I am going to speak to you, I don't sit here and decide, isn't it? I have already planned what I am going to speak for the next 10 weeks. I have already prepared what it is for the rest of the life. It's done already. Are you able to follow? But as I am talking now, I would not go into it. That's all. Is it okay? Mala. Yeah. With this, we conclude for today, and we continue the next session with the definition of the intellect.